I care about this issue because I care about people who are suffering with this identity crisis. I truly do. I care about all the children that are being taught this lie from radical curriculums in schools across our country, and really their childhoods are being ruined and their lives are being affected. I care about all the teenagers who are struggling with body image and their identity, and because of social affirmation, they accept this lie and end up messing up their bodies and their minds. I care about all this. My question is, do you? As a Christian, I believe that Jesus' transformative power is greater than any mental illness or identity disorder. Episode, for example, 111, we talked about 3 ways that I can hear God and that you can hear God for your life. Episode 112, we asked the question of why do some Christians become atheists? And we talked about 2 obstacles to having faith in God. Episode 113, we gave 7 reasons why you and I can't be here by chance. Talk about our existence here on the universe, on Earth, I should say. And yeah, it was mind-blowing, very nerdy, but at the same time, I would say very helpful to anyone who takes their faith seriously. Episode 114 talked about 7 discoveries that prove that the Bible is not a fairy tale. These were archaeological discoveries, proving the existence of Hezekiah and other biblical figures and biblical events. Awesome. Then we took a totally different turn from the archaeological evidence to more the theological side, looking deep at the common words used in church like sin, grace, holiness. What does it mean to live a righteous life, etc. Let's see, episode 116. We talked about, we took a spin at a What If series from Marvel and asked the question, what if Jesus hadn't risen from the dead? What does that mean for the world, and what does that mean for us as Christians? Spoiler alert, we wouldn't actually be Christians. Episode 117, can Christians watch horror movies? This is actually pretty relevant now, as the new Doctor Strange came out. What is it, like a week, 2 weeks ago, something like that? And yeah, I know a lot of Christians probably had to spend some extra time in the quiet place, right? With Jesus, not the movie, the quiet place, meaning like your prayer closet. Yeah, I know a lot of Christians terms out here. Episode 118, why do 20% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ? We asked that deep question. It was a great episode, episode 119. Last week, we talked and asked the question, aren't all religions basically the same? And talked about evangelism. Well, today is episode 120. So I'm going to slow down because I've been talking fast just to get through all those announcements, because today, I got to be honest with you. It's going to be a controversial one for show. As I say, for show, it's going to be a controversial one. And now when I say controversial, I'm gonna ask you not to tune out and not say, oh my gosh, I don't like controversial things. Hey, let me do the talking. I got you. Just listen and really tell me what you think, because there's a reason that I'm talking about this. Not because I want to pick up a fight with anybody or because I just want to be trending, and because no, this doesn't get you trending, honestly. This gets you canceled, because we're going to talk about transgenderism. To be exact, the sad truth behind the transgender movement. As we saw a couple weeks ago, at least 20% of Gen Z identify part of the LGBTQ community. According to author Abigail Schreier, who has documented the rise of transgenderism, especially among teens, in 2018, 2% of high school students said that they were transgender, as compared to the historical kind of rate of identifying as transgender in the population was 0.01. So we went from 1 in 10,000 to 2 in 100. That's a huge increase. So it's definitely a relevant issue. And the goal of this episode is to shed some light on this issue, because there's a lot of, I would say, lies behind this issue, and specifically talk about it from a biblical perspective. So if you're a Christian, we need to know how to address this subject. We need to know how to address people like, what does it mean if someone is transgender, right? How should it affect me, the way I communicate to them? Do I go with what culture tells me? And we shouldn't shy away from tough conversations, especially if we care about people. So here are some of the questions we're going to be answering in today's episode. Are people born transgender? Can someone really change their sexes? Is a transgender woman actually a woman or just a biological man? Are there more than two genders, as we're told? Is there such a thing as a transgender child, that we need like transgender medicine and healthcare for children? Who is John Money and why does it matter? How should Christians respond to someone who identifies as transgender? And at the end of the day, why should we even care? Isn't this a political issue? Like, honestly, why should we care about how or who people believe that they are? This is the debate of our time, though. This is the issue of our generation, that of sexual and gender identity. So I will say up front that this topic is filled with semantics, meaning it's filled with just confusing terminology and language, because really it's not very logically coherent, this movement. So the language is ever changing. So just kind of keep that in mind as we talk about today. And of course, I encourage you to do your own research and really just think about it. If you're a high school student right now, you know that in your school there's so many of the students that identify as LGBTQ. I'm sure you know people that identify as transgender. What does that mean? What should you believe as a Christian, and really as just a person who cares about people? So we're going to start the episode by setting a foundation for the rest of the episode, okay? That means that we're going to take a little bit of a biology course here, a quick one, just Biology 101. And after that, we're going to talk a little bit more of the ramifications of understanding this. So for most of human history, we have known that humans come in two sexes, meaning they're sexually dimorphic, male and female. That's about it. Those that have XY chromosomes are male. Those that are XX are female. Additionally, males and females differ in size. You can say muscle development, brain function, even like leading neuroscientists, he's not a Christian at all, Steven Pinker, states the obvious, quote, differences between the sexes are part of the human condition, end quote. We all understand this. This is common knowledge, is basic biology. However, apparently we're at a point in our society where even basic biology is controversial. There are of course sexual abnormalities, because someone could say, no, wait, they're not only two sexes. What about those that are intersex, or those that have Klinefelter syndrome, where a person has two X chromosomes and a Y chromosome, which results in them having male reproductive organs while having a more female body per se? Well, generally speaking, defects of sexual development affect 1 in every 5,000 births. So not very common, yet they're still there. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean that sex is in the spectrum. That's just very popular to say nowadays. Exceptions don't change the rule. We have a rule and then we have exceptions to that. If one child in every couple thousands is born with 3 toes, we wouldn't say that the amount of human toes is a spectrum. No, that just human was born uniquely and abnormally with 3 toes. So why is this important? Because our sex is founded in biology, not feeling or opinion. I'll say that again. Our sex is founded in biology, not feeling or opinion, or even social affirmation. A man who believes that he's a woman doesn't suddenly become a woman. Or a woman who believes a man doesn't suddenly become a woman. Or any more than, for example, when I believed that I was Superman. I did. I was very young. I had my Superman pajamas. Like, this ain't no joke, man. I had my Superman pajamas. I had like a little Velcro on the shoulder so I could like attach a cape. And man, did I just throw some Superman punches at Josh, my older brother, when I was young. It's like, what was it? It must have been like a couple months ago that my mom showed us a video of that. And I was like, Josh. I was this is a little blonde kid. Josh, mira, Josh, mira, soy Superman, right? Remember, I was kind of raised in Mexico. But unfortunately, it was a sad day when I realized I wasn't Superman. But society tells us that if a man truly believes he's a woman, then boom, he indeed is a woman stuck in a man's body. Or if a girl truly believes she's a boy, then in fact, she's a boy stuck in a girl's body. This is, of course, what's called a self-referential diagnosis, meaning that there's nothing to prove this claim to be true except the individual's feelings. And culture says, well, that's enough, isn't it? Even if that person's feeling goes against their chromosomes, their SRY genes, their reproductive systems, etc. And this is where the second lie comes in, because someone could say, well, Andrew, you see, gender is separate from sex. So sure, you're biologically a man, but your gender is different. You're a female or whatever gender that you may identify with. That is who you are. The lie is that you can actually be a gender completely separated from your sex, because we're told that gender is, at the end of the day, socially constructed, meaning male and female are just oppressive distinctions created by society to promulgate sexist stereotypes to maintain the power of the patriarchy. That was a mouthful, but very much the lingo of the radical left, if you will, or the lingo of just people who truly believe this and say, no, you see, it's just all socially constructed. Yet, everyone understands, or it's a very common sense, that there are some attributes that are generally more masculine than feminine. Women tend to be nicer. I don't know, man. Nowadays, I might take that back. Anyways, women just tend to be nicer. Men tend to be more dumb. Yeah, that's probably never changed. It's okay, guys. Let's just be honest. We're a little bit dumb. But hey, that's just a general idea, right? Because it's just, we all understand that, for example, it's manly to chop wood and women like to be a caregiver. And some of these differences are definitely driven by society, but a lot of these differences are biologically driven. We can't get away from them since we find them in virtually every culture across the world. We all know this. This is not only supported by data, but also common sense. There are, of course, some boys who are effeminate, while there are some girls who are masculine. We've all known this for such a long time. We call them tomboys, right? But to suggest that an effeminate boy is actually a girl, or a masculine girl is actually a boy? Okay. I grant you, that's a more effeminate dude. Yeah. He's got some more estrogen than usual. But he's actually a girl? Like, actually a girl? Yeah, okay, that's nonsense. Plus, if all gender is socially constructed, as feminist Judith Butler has argued and others, why is it more real than sex and biology? Like, why are we focusing on it so much if at the end of the day, it's all socially constructed? Why should we believe if someone's an actual gender, if gender doesn't truly exist, if it's all socially constructed? And why focus on it more, or why should it matter more than what's actually real and what's biological, like your sex? And this is where we arrive at the sad truth behind the transgender movement. This idea that your gender is different than your sex, or that you can be, in fact, a girl stuck in a boy's body, or vice versa, where did it come from? Well, in the 1960s, there was a professor of medical psychology at Johns Hopkins University named John Money. He founded the Johns Hopkins Gender Identity Clinic, and he's actually credited for coining the term gender identity. This is something that he said in some of his writings. Quote, "The gender identity gate is open at birth for a normal child, no less than one born with unfinished sex organs, and would stay that way for at least a year." So what he's saying is that you can have a full biological boy, complete with reproductive systems, SRY genes, the whole thing, but for at least a year, his gender identity gate is open. So that means he could still be a girl, or vice versa. And we've seen this on TikTok, and so many parents raising their kids when that boy just says like, "Oh, I think I'm a girl," because that dude's probably on TikTok listening to all this nonsense, and they're like, "Okay, sweetie, you're a boy, you're a girl, and let's dress you up in dresses." Which, by the way, you're really falling for that societal stereotype. How dare you? How dare you promulgate that oppressive stereotype of girls wearing dresses? Anyways, that's how faulty the logic is. But we've seen this with many parents doing it on social media or TikTok. Well, John Money praised his own success at changing the sex of babies born with incomplete or ambiguous genitalia. According to a 2004 LA Times article reporting on this, John Money boasted that through surgeries and hormone treatments, he could turn a child into whichever sex seemed most appropriate, and that such reassignments were resulting in happy and healthy children. Well, the parents of Bruce Raymer believed him. Raymer was born he was born 12 minutes before his identical twin brother, making him obviously the older brother. But tragically, due to a botched circumcision, Bruce's reproductive organ was mutilated. And to say the least, his parents were distraught. They sought John Money's medical advice because of all his claims, who told them that they should just raise Bruce as a girl. No big deal. And about 6 weeks before his second birthday, Bruce became Brenda on the operating table at Johns Hopkins University. John Money went on to call Brenda's gender conversion a success, wrote about it in his books, made it to Time magazine, where even Time magazine reported that his success showed strong support for a major contention of women's liberationists that conventional patterns of masculine and feminine behavior can be altered. What a success. Yet, LA Times reports the rest of the story. Because what went unreported until decades later, however, was that Money's experiment proved the complete opposite. The immutability of one's inborn sense of gender. It was a sexologist at the University of Hawaii, Milton Diamond, who had his suspicions about Money's claims. So he decided to investigate it himself. He said, something's just not right about it. What happened with Brenda? What happened with Bruce? I will quote LA Times here at length because I believe they give us a great kind of retelling of what happened. So it says this. In an article published in the Archives of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine in 1997, Diamond and the psychiatrist Dr. H. Keith Segmundson showed how Brenda, aka Bruce, has steadily rejected her reassignment from male to female. In early adolescence, she refused to continue receiving the estrogen treatments, and she stopped seeing Dr. Money finally at age 14, and she refused to continue living as a girl. When she confronted, we're still talking about Bruce here, when she confronted her father, he broke down in tears and told her what had happened shortly after her birth. And I say her, I get confused because it's really his, but I'm just quoting LA Times here. Instead of being angry, Brenda was relieved. For the first time, everything made sense, she said. And I understood who I was and what I was. Have you ever heard this story? She decided to reclaim the identity she was born with by taking male hormone shots, undergoing a double mastectomy, and she changed her name to David. At age 25, David married his wife Jane and adopted 3 kids. In an interview in 2000 with Seattle Post, he shared that even though, he's now married and has kids, he shared the reality of him being raised and really used in a gender experiment. He said, quote, "You can never escape the past. I had parts of my body cut away and thrown into a waste paper basket. I've had my mind ripped away." Tragically, his life began to unravel when his twin brother committed suicide. And after 2 years, he lost his job, separated from his wife, and then took his own life at age 38 in 2004. This is a tragic truth of the transgender movement. It's based on the lie. Now, what does that mean? Is it a lie that there aren't people who feel uncomfortable in their own body and that they're just, crazy and, stick them in an asylum? No, that's not the lie. Because the usual response when one talks about transgenderism, and this happens often, is that by me saying that a boy cannot become a girl is somehow hateful and incites violence against trans people, and I'm invalidating their entire existence. This isn't the case. There are people who legitimately believe they are in the wrong body and they are the wrong gender. This is actually a medical term called gender dysphoria. It's a serious disorder, and it's also seriously uncommon. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, it states this, quote, "Those who have received a diagnosis of gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria or transsexualism and were seeking hormonal treatment and or surgery represent 0.005 to 0.014 of males, and then 0.002 to 0.003 for females." This manual was published in 2013, and of course, these rates are dramatically rising, as we said in the last kind of 2 episodes, with multiple celebrities, for example, coming out as transgender over the last few years. Ellen Page now became Elliot Page. Zaya Wade, that's Dwayne Wade's oldest daughter, came out as transgender in 2019, even when she was fairly young. Famously, Rachel Levine is the Assistant Secretary of Health in the United States Department of Health. She's a biological male, but she's like the first open transgender, I think, to be elected in the position that requires a hearing from the Senate. None of these people are actually able to change their sex. Ellen Page is not actually a man. Rachel Levine is not actually a woman. In saying this is not me invalidating their experience nor their existence. I hate to say this, but you see, gender dysphoria in its medical definition is, quote, the persistent belief that you are a member of the opposite sex, end quote. Those that are diagnosed with this have a tragically high suicidal rate and depression rate that remains tragically high post-operation and treatment, even in highly acceptable societies like our own. Again, we're not talking about people that are in the Saudi Arabia where they actually kill you for being homosexual, or I'm assuming transgender. I don't know their laws, but I would assume it's probably not very accepted as it is in the US. Anybody suffering with gender identity disorder should never be mistreated or treated as if they're any less of a person or invalidated their experience. No, they should be treated with compassion and care as we approach any mental illness. Listen closely here. Society has told us that the treatment, if you believe that you're in the wrong body, is to affirm the distressing thoughts inside someone's head. We don't take this approach with really any other mental illness. If somebody has body dysmorphia, for example, and they believe to be obese when they're clearly not, the therapist doesn't say, you know what, you're right, you're clearly obese and you should stop eating completely. Better yet, you should seek, I don't know, maybe, how about let's surgically modify your body somehow so it feels more appropriate to you. Or for example, there's a rare condition called body integrity identity disorder, where people feel that a certain part of their body just doesn't belong to them, or it's outright bad or wrong. So one of those people might feel that, hey, that arm should be amputated. Well, the nation or the national healthcare system in England will not amputate it because the person's mentally ill and they need a therapist to help them see, okay, what's going on? What are the things that are causing this feeling of feeling uncomfortable in your own body? Yet there are real stories and real cases of teenagers in their late years being offered surgeries to mutilate their bodies to align more to their subjective feelings. This is, again, not me being mean, but just simply stating the obvious in reality. So we're dealing here not with some sort of transgender gene that all of a sudden came upon our generation, but more of a social contagion, as author Abigail Schreier and psychologist Jordan Peterson have stated. So to return to the original questions of this episode that we started asking, are people born transgender? Well, no, they're not. You're either born male or female. And are there exceptions? There are, but there's always exceptions to some rule, but that doesn't change the rule. Can someone really change sexes? No. Sex is rooted in biology, not our feelings. Is a transgender woman actually a woman or just a biological man? A transgender woman is just a biological man who looks like a woman, might have taken some altering hormonal treatment, maybe to, if they're a biological man, to increase their estrogen or decrease their testosterone. But they still remain who they were born to be. Are there more than two genders? Nope. In the real world, there are only two genders, male and female. Is there such a thing as a transgender child? No. Children are highly affected and highly malleable. So if a child believes that they're the opposite gender and they get reaffirmed, they will truly believe it and will continue with that. But most likely, and don't quote me on this statistic, but it's right around, I believe, 60% or higher that grow out of this feeling of thinking that they're the opposite gender. And if that feeling does in fact persist, they should seek therapy and help and find the reason of the discomfort. Who is John Money and why should we care? because he's the man responsible for propagating the lie that you can in fact change your sex. And how should Christians respond to someone who identifies as transgender? With love and truth. That's it. We should not accept the lie and that culture tells us and affirm the transgender lie. The transformative power of Jesus is powerful enough to transform anyone. The answer is not to go up to the face of everyone who identifies as transgender, tell them, oh, you're wrong, you're going against biology and your sex. Okay, no, that's not the answer, guys. It's not the answer for like anything when you have disagreements or anything like that. In the context of friendships and actually caring about people, it's about being armed with truth, because it's about caring about the individual and asking questions, not about trying to win an argument. The transgender movement can be summed up in one sentence. They make an objective claim about reality based on subjective feelings. So I care about this issue because I care about people who are suffering with this identity crisis. I truly do. I care about all the children that are being taught this lie from radical curriculums in schools across our country, and really their childhoods are being ruined and their lives are being affected. I care about all the teenagers who are struggling with body image and their identity, and because of social affirmation, they accept this lie and end up messing up their bodies and their minds. I care about all this. My question is, do you? As a Christian, I believe that Jesus' transformative power is greater than any mental illness or identity disorder. So much more, of course, could be said on this topic and on the way that this movement has taken over our education, our Disney, our government institutions. But just like Philip that we talked about last week, when he met the Ethiopian man, he was able to meet him where he was and lead him to the good news of Jesus. In the same way, this is the issue of our generation. We need to meet them where they are and guide them to the truth of Jesus. Are you ready for that? We'll see you in the next episode of The Andrew Omant Show.